Hey everyone, and welcome to this webcast. My name is Julien Testut. I'm part of the GoldenGate product management team. And today we're going to focus on using the admin client, which is one of the command line utility that comes with GoldenGate, with OCI GoldenGate. And the way we're going to interact with admin client is through the OCI Cloud Shell. So I'm going to walk you through, all that process. Before we start, let's take a quick look at what is OCI GoldenGate, for those of you who are not aware of it. So this is a fully native Oracle managed cloud service for all your real-time data integration use cases. It is powered by the latest GoldenGate 21c microservices architecture, and it's basically fully native, fully cloud native, managed by Oracle. We take care of the upgrades, the patching, you have auto-scaling capabilities, and the service allows you to connect to the most popular databases out there, Oracle databases and all different kinds of Oracle databases, as we'll see, MySQL as well, MariaDB, along with big data technologies. And you can use OCI GoldenGate for several use cases to, for example, load your data warehouse in real time, to set up, disaster recovery instances, or maybe to load your data lakehouse. You can capture and deliver data from and into the autonomous databases on OCI, and your sources and targets can be running anywhere. They could be running on premises, they could be running in the Oracle Cloud, but they can also be running in third-party clouds. So that's very important to know. So you can run GoldenGate in different settings, I would say. So you can run GoldenGate on premises, you can run GoldenGate on the OCI marketplace, you can also run GoldenGate as a fully native service, a managed service with OCI GoldenGate. So what are the differences between those different ways of running GoldenGate? So take a look at the different columns that you see on the right of the slide, and as you can see, if you're running GoldenGate on premises or in third-party clouds, you are basically responsible for everything, from finding the hardware or the compute instances to installing the product, configuring it, configuring the network, then patches, upgrades, and so on. And of course, you're responsible for providing the right libraries if you have dependencies, if the sources and targets you want to connect to have dependencies. And you still need to configure your replication processes, but you have a lot of other things to do as well in addition to just focusing on the processes themselves. If you run GoldenGate on the OCI marketplace, there is some automation to help you, in which Oracle is gonna basically set up GoldenGate on a compute instance for you. It's gonna also do some minimal configuration, but then you remain responsible as a user for patches, upgrades, monitoring the infrastructure. There is no cloud automation, no auto scaling, no high availability, and you need to take care of the dependencies that I talk about, and still obviously work on your replication processes. If you use OCI GoldenGate, as you can see, there is a lot of things that are, managed by Oracle. In addition to installing the product, finding the right instances to run it on, we also take care of patches, upgrades, the high availability. You have the auto scaling, you have the OCI monitoring, and in addition to that, we also take care of the dependencies when required, especially for big data technologies. And we have a connections framework that is automatically creating connections and assigning them to your GoldenGate deployments. And finally, the only thing that you're responsible for is basically designing your extracts and your replicats, the replication processes, which is what's going to provide value, to your company. So this is the only thing you have to focus on. So these are, the differences between the different flavors of GoldenGate. So for our use case today, what we're going to do is we're going to capture data from an autonomous transaction processing database, or ATP, using an OCI GoldenGate deployment, and then we're going to deliver the data into an autonomous data warehouse, or ADW instance, also running in OCI. Everything is in the same region. We are going to use one single deployment. We could have used more, we could have used 2 of them, but here we're going to use 1. And the whole infrastructure has already been set up based on some of the blogs and the videos that I previously recorded. So, I've used in the past the OCI command line interface, the CLI, to create my GoldenGate deployment, create the connections to ATP and ADW, and you can just follow the blog or follow the video on YouTube to go through those steps and then that will set up the foundation to then be able to follow that video and do basically what I will do in the next couple of minutes. From that, we're going to use the admin client in Cloud Shell to configure our source and target. We're going to add trend data, and we're going to add a checkpoint table, and I'll explain what it is. We are going to create and start an extract to capture the changes from ATP. We're going to create and start a Replicat to deliver the changes in ADW. We're going to perform some changes, some inserts at the database level using the database actions in the OCI Console. And then finally, we are going to go back to admin client. We're going to use it to monitor our processes, and we're going to list the trail files and purge them, which are, like typical maintenance activities that I thought, would be pretty useful to highlight today. So these are, a couple of links that I thought would be useful to highlight today. We're going to use Cloud Shell. So Cloud Shell is part of the OCI Console, gives you right away basically access to a Linux instance, which comes pre-configured with the OCI SDK, the OCI CLI, and also several utilities, including the GoldenGate utilities like admin client, but also with curl for your REST calls or SQL Plus to connect to your Oracle databases. And then we're going to use admin client. And I've provided here two links, one which is like the reference guide for the command line interfaces in GoldenGate, applies to OCI GoldenGate but also applies to GoldenGate on-prem and the marketplace, and a doc link for OCI GoldenGate specifically about using admin client with OCI GoldenGate, which is pretty much what I'm going to walk you through today, but it's also worth looking at the documentation. So we're going to start with the steps to connect your deployment. And what we're going to do in this session, I'll show you in the slide, I'll talk about what I'm going to do, and then we'll switch to the browser and we'll see it in action. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to launch Cloud Shell, and I'm going to show you that. Then we'll take a look at our GoldenGate deployment, and we are going to use, copy the private IP address, like store it somewhere because we're going to need it. And that private IP address is used to connect to the deployment through an SSH tunnel when that deployment doesn't have a public endpoint. If that deployment has a public endpoint, then you can just use the console URL, and then it's a little easier to use. But it's obviously using a private IP with a private endpoint is more secure. So here I'm going to show you how to connect to the most secure option, which is when there is no public endpoint. So to do so, we're going to use OCI Bastion, which is also a built-in service in OCI, and we're going to use it to set up that SSH, an SSH tunnel, basically using an SSH command in the OCI console. And once we've done that, it's just some configuration steps that you have to perform, but it's going to take just a minute or so, and then we'll be able to run admin client in Cloud Shell, and we'll be able to connect to our deployment using the SSH tunnel. Again, if you are using a deployment with a public endpoint, then no need for an SSH tunnel, no need for OCI Bastion. But if you have a private, don't have, I should say, a public endpoint, then you need to set up that SSH tunnel. And OCI Bastion is one of the easiest options to set it up. Obviously, you can set up your own Bastion server as well. So without further ado, let's actually go into the OCI console. So I'm going to switch to my browser. And so now we're looking at the OCI console, and what we are going to do first is, open up Cloud Shell. So Cloud Shell is right here, that's this icon. Just click on it. And, depending on how long ago you've run it, it takes, between a few seconds, like here, or a few minutes if you never used it or if you haven't used it in a while. And this is basically, spinning up a compute instance and, connecting me into it. So that's being done here. In the meantime, what we're going to do is we are going to go to our GoldenGate deployment. So here I pinned GoldenGate as a shortcut on the home page. You can also go to the OCI menu here, go to Oracle database, and then go to GoldenGate to find your GoldenGate deployments. You can obviously minimize the Cloud Shell window if it's bothering you at the bottom. And then once you're there, you can go to deployments. And the deployment we're going to use today is called blog OCI GG_CLI. So that's the same one that I've used for my previous blogs, for the CLI, for the REST APIs, if you've seen it. And that's the one we used for the video last time. So that's the one we are using here. And like I said, this one has no public endpoint, which means that, if I click on Launch Console, it's going to tell me that, you cannot open it right away. You need to open it using either an SSH tunnel or, using a compute instance that is running in OCI. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set up that SSH tunnel. Again, if you have a public endpoint, you can just launch the console directly and you can connect to your deployment without an SSH tunnel. So it really depends on how you set it up. What we're going to do here is we're going to take that private IP address, I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to go to the Bastion service that I opened up here as a second tab. Bastion, you can find it under Identity and Security, and then you are going to find Bastion over here at the bottom. Okay, click on it, and what you do is you create a Bastion if you don't have one already. I have one that I've used previously to connect to an OCI MySQL database system, so that's the one we're using today. But you can just create it. The only thing to provide is the subnet you want to create it in, and the CIDR block that will have access to the Bastion. If you want to use that Bastion with Cloud Shell, where you don't know what IP we're going to have, just use 0000/0. I know it's not super secure, but that's the only way to connect from Cloud Shell to the Bastion. So that's how you have to set it up. And then go to Bastion MySQL, and there you can see an existing one, and actually already have a session that is set up, but I'm just going to walk you through how to set it up. You click on Create Session. You are going to use as a session type SSH port forwarding session. And enter the private IP that you copied, like 10.0.0.21 in this case, the port that is the HTTPS port here, port 443, and then you provide an SSH key. You can either, like I do here, just take it from, and it's the public key here that you have to provide, take it from your local system, or what you can do is you can just generate a new SSH key, and that works, as well. You can also paste the content in the window if you wanted to. And then click on Create Session. So I've already done it here, so I'm not going to do it again, but click on Create Session. It takes, maybe like 10-20 seconds for the session to go from creating to active. And then once you have that, you have two options. You could view the command, which is this guy here, and you could modify it in this window here, provide the SSH key name and the port you want to use right here, and then copy this. Or what I do personally is I just copy the SSH command, and then we go into Cloud Shell, and there I'm just gonna copy it, and that's here that we are going to customize it. So I'm going to use a public key that I've already uploaded into Cloud Shell. That's my private key, sorry, here, that I've already uploaded. So in Cloud Shell, you have a menu here. You can upload files, and they land on disk here, and then you can use them. So that's how I got my SSH key. And then here for the local port, like the port that we want to use on the target side is 443. Here I'm going to use 4430 because I cannot use 443 here. It's going to be a reserved port, so I cannot use it right here. It's a privileged port, so you have to use something else. So I'm using 4430. And then very important, if it's the first time you're using your Bastion, you run this. You run the command as is, and this is gonna add the Bastion host to the SSH non-hosts. So you have to use it to do this. And then you stop the command and you rerun it again using the ampersand at the end. Okay, and then it's gonna run in the background, and then we'll be able to have our SSH tunnel working, and we'll be able to use admin client. So very important. First time, no ampersand, so you run it in the foreground, and you can add the host to the non-host, and then the second time and onward and moving forward, you can just use the ampersand, and then that's gonna work. press enter. You are getting this warning here, which is completely normal. Just ignore it. Just press enter again. And then the SSH tunnel is ready to go. And what we can do is use the admin client command, which is, auto resolves and everything. It's part of the shell. Now, that I'm in admin client, I'm not connected yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to run connect. And because we're using the SSH channel, we're going to connect to the HTTPS localhost, because we are doing the port forwarding, and then we're going to use the port 4430 and provide your GoldenGate user, the one that you use, for example, to create the deployment, so OCI admin typically, and then ensure, here, what you can do is just pass the password. So you provide password and then, your password in here. Obviously, in the video, I'm not going to show my password. So I'm just going to, just use the user, and then it's going to prompt me for the password. But either way, make sure you provide an exclamation mark at the end. It's very important. Otherwise, the command will fail. So make sure you use the exclamation mark to enable that secure connectivity with the deployment, and press enter. And then in my case, it's asking me for the password. Again, you can bypass that if you just connect as username password and provide it there. Okay, so now we're basically connected to our deployment, and that deployment is basically already running, obviously, and we are actually going to take a look at the UI in just a sec. But we're right now we're connected through the command line using admin client to our deployment. So let's just quickly take a look at that deployment. I've set up an SSH tunnel on my local machine as well to connect to it. So that's why you see localhost. But that's the same deployment that you guys saw, blog OCI GGCSI. And as you can see, there are no extracts, no replicats. And if we go to the configuration, we have our two databases that are already set up. We have SRC ATP, TRG ADW, so source ATP target ADW, and we're going to add first of all we're going to add the trend data on a schema in blog SRC ATP, and then we're going to add the checkpoint table in the ADW target. So we're going to do that through the command line. Okay, so let's go back to Cloud Shell and actually go back to the slides themselves. And so this is basically what we've gone through right now. We've used the SSH channel, we've run admin client, and this is the connect command that you can use to connect to your deployment using your username and your password. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to first list the credentials. So basically what I just showed you in the user interface where we saw blog SRC ATP, blog TRG ADW, we're going to run info credential store in admin client to get the list of those credentials, those connections, if you will. Then what we're going to do is we are going to log into the source ATP instance using a command called dblogin user ID alias and the credential alias, which is blog SRC ATP in our case. And then once we're connected, we're going to use add schema trend data with the schema name, which is going to be SRC underscore OCI GGLL. And the sample data is part of the blogs that I've previously done, and this is something we use in our live labs or demo environments, basically, or sandbox environments. And schema trend data is going to enable the supplemental logging on the database and allow GoldenGate to basically capture the change data. Then on the target side, we're going to do pretty much the same. We're going to connect to the targets using db login user ID alias, but blog TRG ADW this time, because we connect to the target ADW instance. And then we're going to add what we call a checkpoint table. And that checkpoint table is going to help GoldenGate recover in case of expected or unexpected failures. And so this is part of one reason why GoldenGate is so resilient is that we use checkpoints and we can use checkpoint tables, which is a best practice. So we're going to do that. And to do so, we're going to go back to our browser, back to admin client, and we're going to run those commands. So now we are back in Admin Client in Cloud Shell. By the way, you can also maximize Cloud Shell. You can just maximize it here, and then you can just run the commands. In this case, I'm okay with just, having it at the bottom. I'm going to run, info credential store, and this is providing a list of all the, basically all the credentials that are part of the user interface. So we have a couple of aliases, and you can see the connection strings, and the ones we are interested in, or the ones that we're going to use today, are blog src ATP and blog trg ADW, and this is basically the the connection strings that GoldenGate is going to use to connect to those databases. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do db login, user ID alias, and blog src ATP to connect to my ATP instance through GoldenGate. So now I'm successfully logged into the database. And the next thing I want to do is just add schema trend data for src OCI GGLL, because this is where I have my source data, and this is what I want to obviously capture data from. So that's what we're going to use here. Add schema trend data src OCI GGLL. Just press enter, and then after a few seconds, it's going to come back and tell me that the command was run successfully. So let's just wait a little bit. All right, so we can see that schema trend data has been added successfully, and we can actually already go to the user interface and take a look, just to make sure that this was done correctly. So I can just connect to my blog src ATP instance, and if I look for a schema called src OCI GGLL and I search for the trend data information, we can see that yes, it's added, it knows about it, and it prepared 6 tables. We have src cd, src orders, and so on, that are already configured for the change data capture. So next, let's go back to our admin client, and this time we are going to log into our target, which is, as you guys remember, blog trg ADW. So we log into the database, and then we're going to add a checkpoint table, and this is going to be src mirror this time, OCI GGLL. So this is where, and this is where I want to store the checkpoint table, and then the table itself we're going to call it check table, and then just run that. This has added the checkpoint table in my target ADW instance, and we can also verify by going into the user interface, connect to our target, and when we connect to the target, it's actually loading the checkpoint tables at the beginning, at the top, and we can see that we have a checkpoint table in the right schema called check table. So we've pretty much done with the early configuration work to be able to set up the replication processes. So, and that will be done, through what we call extracts and replicats, which, as you can see, are not available yet. So we're going to create them together. So to do so, we're going to go back to our slides and just review the commands that you need to run to create those processes. So to create and start your extracts in OCI GoldenGate through Admin Client, you have a couple of commands that you can run. So the first one at the top, which is the one we're going to run, is called add extract EATP, integrated trend log, begin now. And what this does is it's going to add an extract called EATP. The extract is going to be an integrated extract. We have several types of extracts, and that's one of them. And it's going to start processing the data right away. Then we are going to add a trail. A trail is where the change data is going to be stored, and we're going to add a trail called E1 that is going to be associated with the extract called EATP, and that trail will have, actually it's a trail group that has multiple files in the group, and each file is going to be a 250 megabytes file. And so this is an optional parameter that you can provide or not. but here I've decided to provide it, and every time there is more than 250 megabytes of change data, a new file will be created, and then there is a automated rotation that you can configure where you can rotate through multiple trails. So the command add xtrail e1 extract eatp megabytes 250. Once we've done that, we're going to log into the database, the source database again, using dblogin user ID alias blog src-atp, and we are going to register the extract called eatp with the database, with the source database, and this is what is going to enable GoldenGate to capture the change data. And then finally, we're going to start the extract. So just a few commands, 5 of them, to be able to create and start a capture process on an autonomous database, but on any Oracle database. So let's take a look at that in Admin Client. So we're back in our browser, we're back in the OCI Console, and we're still connected in Cloud Shell to our deployment using Admin Client. And so we're going to run those commands that we've looked at, just a few seconds ago. So the first one was add extract eatp integrated trend log begin now. So this again creates an extract called eatp, an integrated extract, and it starts processing data right away. So it begins now. You can of course begin, at a specific SCN. You can also begin at a specific time, but here, keeping it simple, we just begin now. The next command is to add that trail called E1 and then linking it to the extract called EATP, and then again each file in the trail group will be 250 megabytes. I've already obviously performed some testing steps, so that trail already exists, but if it's your first time running this, it's going to create the trail and associate it with EATP. Then we log into the source ATP database, and we do so we can register the extract called EATP with the database using this command, register extract EATP database. And after a few seconds, the extract should be starting. So the extract started, and as you can see, successfully registered with the database at a specific SCN. And then from here, we can just start the extract. And actually, even before we start it, let's just take a quick look in the UI, in the user interface. If we go here, now you can see there is an extract. It's in yellow state, if you will, because it's not started yet. So we go back to Admin Client, and now we run that start command, and now our extract is running. And then if we go back to the UI, it should turn green, and it just turned green as I was, switching basically tabs. So this shows you how to very quickly, in just a few commands, create and start an extract using Admin Client. So let's go back to the slides. And now we are going to see how to create a Replicat. To create a Replicat, we're going to follow similar steps. We're going to first run a command that's going to add a Replicat called radw, R for Replicat, adw for the target name, that is using a trail file called E1. It's going to start processing data now, and it's going to use a checkpoint table that is called src mirror OCI GGLL check table. And finally, we're going to start the Replicat using start Replicat radw. So with that, let's do it in the browser together. Let's go back to the OCI Console. So back to our Admin Client in Cloud Shell in OCI Console, so we can just add the Replicat. So now if we go back to our user interface in the other tab, we should be able to see that the Replicat has been created. And so yeah, the Replicat is there. It's called radw. It's in yellow state because it hasn't started yet. And then if you go back to the deployment here and we run the command to actually start it, then the Replicat starts, and then if we go back here, it will turn green after just a few seconds. So as you can see, the Replicat is green, the extract is green as well, and we could start processing data. And so this has basically walked you through the creation of the Replicat. And next, what we're going to do is we are first going to insert some changes using the database actions in our source ATP instance. We're going to do 10 inserts in the ATP system. And then we're going to monitor, using admin client, the statistics. So we're going to make sure that the extract captured those 10 changes, that the Replicat delivered those 10 changes. And then I'll show you how to view the report file, which is very useful for just troubleshooting, debugging, also just for your own monitoring activities to just make sure everything is working fine in OCI GoldenGate. So now let's go back to our browser. And let's take a look at all those steps. First of all, what I've done in the meantime is I've opened up the database actions and the SQL user interface. And what we're going to do is we are going to insert 10 new records into this table, SRC, OCI, GGLL, SRC City. And we are going to start from 1730 all the way to 39. And I'm going to just paste it here, just run the inserts. And then we're going to go back to our admin client UI. And what we're going to do is we're going to run stats extract EATP. And this is going to return the statistics. I'm going to make it a little bigger. This is going to return the stats for our extract. And as we can see, for the table called SRC City, it captured 10 inserts. So, the extract did its job. And then if we do the same for the Replicat called RADW, then the command should also return 10 inserts that were replicated into SRC Mirror, OCI GGLL, SRC City. So this is, basically ensuring, that showing, through stats that your extract and your Replicat, did the right thing. What I can do too, and what I'm going to show you, is I can take a look at the report file for, let's say, RADW. And so this is opening up the report file, and you can just browse through it. So it's basically showing you all the content of the file, the database that it's connecting to, which trail it's using, and then the mapping that it has used here to basically grab the data from SRC OCI GGLL and then map it into SRC Mirror OCI GGLL. Obviously, as a part of the extract or a Replicat configuration, you can customize, the table mapping and apply some filtering and do all kinds of things that GoldenGate supports with your data. So what we've shown in just a few minutes is how to set up, how to connect your deployment, how to set up your sources and targets, set up your extract, set up your Replicat, and then perform some changes and view the statistics, monitor the job. So that's pretty hopefully pretty useful. So we've gone through all those steps. What's just remaining that I want to show you today is how to do some maintenance activities, how to perform those maintenance activities using admin client. And one of the most important maintenance activity in GoldenGate is purging the trails. You can set up tasks in the user interface or through the REST APIs to automatically purge the data. You can also use admin client to purge the data or purge the unused trail data manually. What we're going to do is we're going to use info x trail with the wildcard being a star to list all the trails. So there will be only one, E1 in our case. And then we're going to use purge x trail E1 to purge the unused trails, if any. So we just kicked off the process, so obviously there shouldn't be anything to purge, but if you've been running the processes for some time, especially if you did some initial loads, it's always a good practice, a best practice, if I can say, to purge the data pretty often to ensure that GoldenGate performs as best as possible. So let's go back to our browser. And the first command that we're going to run is the command to list the trail files. So we're going to run info ext trail star, and this is showing a trail. There is only one called E1. associated with the extract EATP. The length of the sequence, it means that it's going to keep 9 files around for the trails, and it's going to rotate through, from 001 to, 009, basically. And right now we're actually on the number 3 in my case, because I've already run a couple of tests and everything. For you guys, you should be on the first sequence right there. And if you haven't run it before, obviously. And then we're going to purge xtrail E1, and then this would purge, the unused trails that extracts wouldn't be using right now. As you guys can see, it's smart. It knows that here E1 is already used by my extract, so it's not deleting anything, because it could delete data that I actually need, right? Like or a file that is already being used, right? So that's obviously not working, but this is again a good practice. Do it once in a while, especially if you deal with a lot of data, and this is very helpful to be able to do this through the admin client. And so we're basically taking a look at all the commands that I wanted to show you. So let's take a look at some of the next steps. So you could take an interactive guided tour that is part of our documentation. I highly recommend it if you want to get familiar with OCI GoldenGate. We have hands-on labs, we have live labs that you can run either in your own tenancy or in our sandbox tenancy that we provide access to, the green button that allows you to start your live labs right away. And I would highly recommend to run OCI GoldenGate for yourself. You have a free trial, and if you already have a tenancy, an OCI tenancy, you can use the kickstarts that we are providing with the service documentation. So again, I hope that was useful. Like to see the list of commands and what you can do with admin client in Cloud Shell, how to easily connect your deployments and run commands to create, manage, monitor, and purge, maintain basically your OCI GoldenGate deployment. So thanks for your time and have a great day.